So my name is Sofia Falk, and I am the CEO and founder of a company called We Are the StoryDoers. And I have been hacking the corporate system of these multinational corporations since 2008 because we need to change things. So what we do is we go to the executive management teams and we talk about why diversity and inclusion will matter for the bottom line. And then they say, wow, it really is about mirroring the market, capturing new market shares or whatever that might be. But how should we do it? How should we change? And then we let them to identify internal management consultants, because we believe that the best expert there is within these companies to actually create change are the employees themselves. So we identified between 100 and 150 employees from all hierarchical levels, all business areas, from all around the world, and we let them to scrutinize their processes, routines, how they work in their everyday work, to see in what ways do we actually hinder ourselves in terms of tapping into more brain power or more diverse people, and where do we have a way of actually broaden our perspective and bring diverse people and competence into our business. So that's what we do, and we've been doing this, as I said, since 2008, and for now we have been working with more than 50 global corporations. It's such as Scania and IKEA, H&M, Ericsson, Volvo, not Electrolux yet, but I hope someday we will do that. But we also work in the sub-Saharan continent with the Swedish, what is it? Swed Fund. What is Swed Fund?
Swed Fund.
Yeah, it's like
Development Fund?
Yeah, it's like the government's development fund, and they believe that gender equality could boost their business. So we help them to get more women to operating in management positions, so it could boost their business. So I'm going to talk about how our companies view this issue, and during the next 45 minutes, I will talk about why do we need diversity and inclusion, and then we will take us into the world. What can we gain from it, and what do we risk if we don't manage to use it in our business, in our day-to-day work? And then ultimately, how can an organization upgrade itself and find a new way of thinking and trigger new behaviors that actually takes advantage of diversity and inclusion? Sounds good?
Sounds good. You have to tell about yourself and your own
I will. But just when we go into these large corporations, diversity and inclusion is the hottest topic right now in the business world, apart from sustainability or growth, of course, profitability. But diversity has become one of the top topics for executive management teams in the global corporations. So then we go in and try to describe what it is. And you're going to experience what it feels like for them when we first start to work with them. So we will do an exercise. I think you will have to sit down, or because if you stand up, you might not see this. So you will do an exercise. On the next slide, I will show you the numbers 1 to 54. And your mission is to identify each number from number 1, then 2, 3, up to 54 in your head silently. Are you ready for it? You will have 90 seconds. And if you're ready before 90 seconds are up, you can stand up. Okay? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Let's roll. So you have 1 minute left. If you don't see, you can stand up. But then you have to sit down when you're done. So 30 seconds. No pressure. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 90 seconds are up. Was there anyone in here that came to 50? No? Yes? Did you come to 54?
Yeah, but I know the trick.
You know the trick, okay. You know the trick, okay. So, yeah.
I didn't tell her.
No, okay. I will show you the trick very soon. But this is what it looks like, and this is what it feels like when we go into an executive management team and we talk about diversity and inclusion. Because diversity and inclusion has been more about compliance. It has been more about things that HR is doing. They don't understand what does it actually mean for business. So it is a hard exercise. It's completely random and it's different colors, but there is a system, of course. So this is a system. It goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then up again 10, 11. Okay, try again. It's easier, right? Yeah. So what we need when we go in and talk about diversity and inclusion is some kind of structure, some common approach, so we can actually spot where diversity matters for our bottom line and where it actually hinders us from being competitive. So that's what we do. But now we're going to talk about why we need diversity and inclusion. And then I want to tell you, you have been seeing me, I'm Sofia Falk, I've been working with these all corporations, but who am I and why am I so passionate about this issue? And it all started when I was 20 years old. I had entered the military service as an intelligence officer, and we were 60 guys, or 60 people, and we were 3 women in this group. So when I started my career in the military, I thought that I had the same prerequisites and the same possibilities to perform as the guys. But when I came in as top 10 out of 60 on a half marathon, I had 15 kilos on my body, I had a gun, I had this, protective vest. Top 10 out of 60. And they said, "Oh, Sergeant Falk, you're such a lucky girl." And I'm like, lucky? But they said I was lucky even when I was at the shooting range or when I did the academic exams, because in that culture, I wasn't the norm. So competence or potential couldn't look like me, obviously. So when I did perform well, it was because I was a girl or because I was lucky. Or actually, one morning, a guy said, "Oh, well, Sofia, you ate porridge." I didn't. And I was like, what? But it was very interesting to be in that culture. I stood out. Everybody knew my name. I didn't know, all these guys, but it was special. So that was my first experience in being a very minority group in a larger minority. But I actually liked it anyways. I liked it so much that I stayed in the military. So I was an intelligence officer in Kosovo, in Pristina, and then ultimately in other countries in the world as well. And then I started as a risk and crisis management consultant at the age of 24. And then I left the military. So I was like, okay, this was military. I know they could apologize for being in the military. But then I entered the private sector. And it wasn't that women dominated either. So I was entering this management teams group, and I was setting up my computer, and I was about to conduct a tabletop exercise with these 10 men. And then all of a sudden a man raised his hand and is like, "Okay, so miss, when is the consultant coming?" And I was like, "Well, that's me." "No, you can't possibly know anything about risk and crisis management." And so it was, and there I was in the private sector, and I started to look on, okay, so how are we actually doing things? And I left that male-dominated world and went into the communication world, where we had more women, but it was still the same. And then I okay, where should I go? Where should I go to find solutions for how to cope with this? And then I started as a recruiter, and I had only 3 months before I started my company as a recruiter. But what I saw then, because I was meeting all these CEOs and HR directors at the largest companies in Sweden, and they told me we don't find any competent women, or when we ask them to become a manager, they don't want to, or when they do become a manager, they don't stay that long. So what could we do? And I was asking them okay, so how are you coping with this as of today? And they were like, yeah, we have all these great networks of special leadership programs because, the women need to toughen up and need to negotiate, and they needed so many things. And I was like, well, I don't think it's actually about fixing the people. I think it's more about fixing the system. that these people are in. So that's hence the method, using the best experts you have within the corporations to see if I were to reach my full potential and reach whatever I am as the person I am, how should we work with recruitment, communication, feedback culture, promotion, whatever. And since then I've been doing this. So why do we need diversity and inclusion? Well, 2008, when I started to work, we talked about diversity and inclusion more as a compliance thing. It was like they did. It was like fixing the people, fixing the underrepresented minorities that hasn't been seen at the upper levels where the money or the power sits. And now they actually starting to see like we are losing business. We work with the 10 largest law firms in Sweden right now. And they see, for example, that when they, send their best team, they get no because they have 3 white males, and they need diversity to be able to work with some companies. Or we had this marketing product campaigns that actually, doesn't go well because you don't have the cultural keys in the product team. So companies are seeing that, well, it might be not only compliance and a thing that HR should do, it actually could be something part of our business, but we don't know how to do it. But if we're looking on how it could be tomorrow, or I think it will be, is actually the trend that is happening right now with diversity and inclusion is going the same way as it is for sustainability. I mean, like Volkswagen, that could happen, it probably won't happen that much in the future. So, and the same with diversity and inclusion. You have to make it a part of your strategy, of your business. So how we see it in the corporations when we work is actually you have to be able to deliver on the demands of the future demands. So you are here 2016 and you have all these great people within your corporation. But who will you meet? Who will you interact with? And what will they need from your corporation 2020, 2030? So how can you make sure to get all the people you will need to follow your journey to 2020? And how can you find the people you will need to actually be able to deliver on this? Again, the law firms, they are seeing a digital tsunami coming towards them. And they don't have any people to work with digital communication. And they will have to do that. So how can they find those people, for example? But if you look at who demands our future, we see that, for Northern Europe, we have challenges because we become older and older. And we need to actually import competence. And we are kind of lucky because we have all this massive migration, but we don't yet have any abilities to bring those people and those ideas and those perspectives into our business. We also see that we are getting older, but we still work longer. So in companies where you actually, maybe have heavy lifts or whatever that might be, how can you make sure that these people will stay and not be sick and cost you a lot of money? We see also that future is female. 64% of the ones with a university degree are female, all around the world. And if we look on the natural sciences, the students, where do we find them? Well, we don't find them in Europe anymore. We find them in sub-Saharan Africa or in Asia. So we have to see that it's a new world, it's a global world, and we have to find the ways to bring those people into our company and make the most out of those ideas. So, are you following me?
Yes.
Great. So, what can we gain from diversity and inclusion, and what do we risk avoiding it? Well, if we're looking at statistics, diverse and inclusive workforce demonstrate that people, they want to stay longer. They collaborate better, and they have greater team commitment. These are things these are not new facts, but still we see so many homogeneous and ineffective teams out there in the corporations. And what leader don't want this? Or what business leader don't want to see that they have 60% more likelihood to see their ideas prototyped and actually see their innovation implemented? And also gain new market shares or increase market shares. These are statistics, and I think most of the people do know it, but we still is something hindering us. And that's why I want to show you a movie to see what it's all about. Because actually, we have all these statistics, and I'm going to try to make this big.
Yes.
How do I do that? It's big. It's big enough. Fun. Oh. Okay, I'm going to show you a movie, and then I'm going to have a brief discussion. All right?
You're about to meet Michael. He lives fast as a self-made millionaire.
You didn't have to dress up. It's all right.
You're going to photograph Michael. He's actually saved somebody's life. Michael is an ex-inmate. He's a commercial fisherman. Michael claims to be psychic.
Nice to meet you.
Michael's a former alcoholic. Here's your camera. I would like you to flesh out the essence of who he is.
What would you like out of this? What would you like the photograph to say about you?
Do you find that being a psychic impacts much on your day-to-day life?
I can see this is emotional for you.
Like to get to know the person. You've only got 10 minutes, right?
I think you're a guy that's put yourself out there. You're not hiding anything. My plan was to find out about whoever it was and to try and get that. And what I learned from him is he's incredibly brave.
It was really intense. Pull his shirt out. Sorry.
I wanted to see the nature of the person, which then present a challenge. How do you portray him as a fisherman?
That's perfect.
He's a self-made millionaire and sort of a little bit intimidating if I wasn't going for a beautiful, nice, perfectly lit portrait.
I just wanted to try and bring out something of who you are. I think that you just treat people like the everyday people, like everybody is.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, I hope I've got that guy's bravery on film.
So it was a very intimidating environment.
I'll see you work.
I like the empty chair next to it too.
This is a totally different person.
Almost looks like 6 different people. So not everything I told you today was true. I'm not a fisherman. I am not an alcoholic. The GFC hit me hard, but I've never been a millionaire. Never been in prison. I am a Bondi lifesaver, but the story we talked about never did. Not psychic. Can barely spell it.
Before I knew there were different characteristics, I thought, that's really strange. These don't look like portraits of the character I thought you were. You've always got your own preconceptions and you've got your ideas.
It pushed me into a position and a space that I wouldn't normally be in.
You have to dig a lot deeper. It means you've got to be, I think, a lot more creative to work out how you're going to play things.
Okay, so we have all these statistics, but we still have brains, and we still have brains that categorize and stereotype. So before I move on, I want you to two and two reflect upon what type of prejudices might you have, or what might others have of you, and what could that lead to in a business setting. So 2 and 2. Prejudices you have or others have from you. You do have a lot to talk about. It's going to be a great mingle. Okay, do you have the time to share anything? Any ideas that you want to share with the group? Do you have any stereotypes? No. Prejudices? No. Someone who wants to share?
I think it was the same in our discussion. I think we have the same view on it, that we are very, we have a lot of prejudice about people, and we also very quickly judge, just with parents, in different codes and things like that.
Yeah.
Even though we are aware and try to work with it, it still happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yes?
We said more or less the same, but we think that the consequence is that you get really skeptical about some people or a group of people. That can be really negative on your business or whatever you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. And we do see that. I mean, we have so much statistics, and I won't talk about it, but we see that we do prefer white names versus non-white names. Actually, if you have a white name, you have 50% more possibility to be called to an interview. And we see the same difference when you are likely to promote a woman or a man. We defined how we look very different in terms of how we value people. And that's why it's so important. I mean, we could have all this, political correct targets of diversity, or we could have all these plans and policies, but we are humans, and all of us has a brain, and it is amazing, because what it does is that it helps us to store massive amounts of information that we unconsciously draw from every day. I mean, if we're running out in the forest and we see this stick, at least I had this adrenaline, push. It's like, oh, it could be a snake and it could bite me and I don't want that. Or I actually, heading to over a road, and it comes this truck from Scania maybe. Can it drive in 220 kilometers per hour?
Oh, of course.
Of course, yeah. Okay, a heavy truck coming towards me very fast. Instinctively, I think I step back if I don't want to die today, right? But it's actually a choice that we can make because we have stored information. The tricky thing about the brain is that it doesn't differ between objects and people. So if we have been interacting with some type of person, or if we have, been in a group of a lot of engineers, for example, we know how engineers are. If we have been in a group with creative thinkers, we know that how they are. And we know how Asians are and Hispanic people, and we know everything, right? But imagine this stick on the ground is a CV, a resume, with the name that sounds, the name and the background that reminds you of some people you might have been recruited and it went so wrong, you don't even find out. Instinctively, you put that away. Or for example, if you come to participate in a new team and you meet a person that reminds you of the person that scared you big time in Bronx last year, would you confide with that person? Would you trust that person or not? So we really have to find out these. But we also have to help ourselves. But, I mean, it could go completely wrong. You know about Kodak, right? Yes. Yeah. So they had a team that had been working very, very long together. And they didn't have any creative culture. They did what they always did. And the management team has worked together, as I said, very long. And so a guy, an engineer at the company, invented the digital camera and came to the management team and said, oh, hi, look at this. And they said, oh, that's so cute, but don't tell anyone about it. And yeah, Kodak. But we do have Nokia as well. They had put a very high trust on engineers. So what they had accomplished was to create extremely good cell phones. but they didn't have room for people with social skills or like design thinking or whatever, which made them do not believe the iPhone. They were bought by Microsoft. And Microsoft, they tried to launch on the Asian market the first time, and they had their design team for their gaming console in Europe. European men have larger hands than Asians. And we also have Volvo Cars. They had their design team in Gothenburg, and they had a premium brand for a premium man, they think. It will be a man buying a car, he will be around 40, 50, he will be European maybe, and he will of course be driving the car. But in some markets, you don't drive the car, you have your private driver. So it doesn't matter if you pimp the driver's seat, if it's backseat you should. But also, we have actually a new company, and this is amazing. It was a guy called Tristan Walker in the United States, and he's a black man, and he had been seeing these shaving products that are all made for white skin. There's like no products for people like him, so he developed it, and they are a very, very large company now. And we have a Swedish company called by Mekonomen. It's a car washing company, and they saw that 70% of the customers that arrive in our boutique the first time, they don't come back, and they are women. Why do they leave? So they asked, like, why are you not staying? Well, it's dirty, and I've been meeting by a guy and says, like, oh, honey, I will of course help you because you don't know anything about cars. It could be true, but I don't want to be met by disrespect. But also, they wanted to use their time wisely when they spend time in the boutique. So they wanted to buy stuff for the home, for the car, or whatever. So they developed a whole new lifestyle segment called by Mekonomen, and they went all-time high 2012. But we also have Cisco, and they saw that when they recruited people from the autistic spectra, they actually performed very well if they had one type of leadership, and if they also were sitting in a company in a setting where it was quiet and nice and easy. So they have made as a business advantage to actually recruit people from the autistic spectrum. They have a felmarginal, what is it? They're like margin of error. Margin of error. Yeah, they have a margin of error when they try out software on 0.5% versus a normal person that has 5%. So I mean, you can actually get something from this diversity if you know how to use it. And that's why it is so challenging to see all corporations. I mean, who defines the future of a company normally looks like this. And now I am generalizing, of course, but if I Google on management teams, this is what comes up, or this is like a million times this comes up. And if they have gone to the same school, they from the same socioeconomic background, they have been working together, solving solutions or problems in the same way always, could they meet and predict the future needs of their customers that are rapidly changing or not? I think not. So, yeah. So when we work with these companies, we talk about diversity and inclusion like this. Diversity is about bringing the right mix of people into your business. And inclusion is about making sure that they get up to dance and have a great evening, right? And if you don't have diversity, it doesn't matter with inclusion. But if you don't have inclusion and diversity, you will have nothing. So you have to work with both. And when we work with our method, like reorganizing and restructuring the basic processes in these corporations, it could look like this. So I will end up with giving you some examples of the companies that we have been working with, and remind it's these heavy, large corporations. I will not mention names because I'm being recorded, but it's, great, large corporations. So the first thing that always comes up is, how do we attract and recruit people? We don't find competent women. I mean, how many of you have heard that? Yes, we hear it all the time. Or we don't find any competent whatever, or we don't. But it could start with changing the job ad. It was this heavy engineering company that they wanted a constructor that were women, because they wanted a team that had more perspectives, ideas, preferences in the group, and also had another dynamic. And they didn't find any women when they had constructor as a title on the job description, and also you have to have been going to this school and you have been working in this position and blah, 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 blah. So they didn't find any, 0 applicants. And what they did then is, because one woman said, well, can't we just change it? Can't we just redefine it? What if we wrote product developer instead of constructor? What would happen? And what would happen if we skip this, you have to have done this, instead you have to have the potential to achieve this? 40% female applicants. Small changes. We also have, actually it was Scania, Polska, they saw that when we're trying to find people to the financial team, we go to the School of Warsaw, we go to this program and we find these people with this socioeconomic background, etc., etc. We want something new. And the CEO, former CEO at Scania Polska, he said, like, can't we just try to find them within the corporation? Like, because maybe they don't need that education, but they do need to know our organization and culture. So they let everybody to do a numerical test, and they found out that their receptionist scored all-time high. So they picked her to participate in the CFO team. That's quite amazing. And we also have Spotify. Oh, yeah, sorry, now I mentioned it. But and I mentioned Scania, but it's a good example. So Spotify, they have, you know what Spotify is? Yes. So they use diversity hackathons, or they use hackathons actually to find new talent to help them to revise their business model and interface and the product itself, whatever. So they try to find students that comes 48 hours and sit and think, how can Spotify be even better? But normally they reach out, they get 85% men from a certain school and 15% women, and they're like, we missed something here, what can we do differently? So what they did differently was a lot of things, but it was the small things. They redesigned the whole invitation so it made it more playful. They also said to all their friends, sisters, brothers, you know, former colleagues, like, send this out, push this out to anyone. Because they didn't require to have a certain education. They required to have the right attitude and be motivated to participate. So that was the qualification, because they offered 2 days tutorials. So they got 500 applicants. They could host 5 50-50 hackathons. What was interesting, not only in the applicant part, they set groups together, 2 females, 2 men, you shouldn't know each other. And what happened? Instead of 10 similar solutions that they were used to, they got 10 different solutions. So that about that. Develop people. Many companies have nomination programs. That's so bad if you want diversity. It was this large technology company that we work with, and they saw, okay, in order to become a division manager, you have to be in those 4 critical leadership programs. Okay, but how do I make part of that? Well, you get nominated. Okay, who nominates? The ones who have been participating. Okay, who have been participating? 80% Swedes, engineers, and men. So they have their network. And I mean, this company have 80% of their business outside Sweden. So they have to reverse it. How do we do it? Well, they had an open application process. Took more time. They reversed the applicants totally. This is also important. If you have diversity, do you let them to bring their ideas to the table? We were working with one management consulting firm, and they saw that, well, we have a sense of feeling that the guy speaks more than the women. Could we find out if this is true? Wow. It was true. They started to time their meetings, so actually it was airtime between 65% to 85% taken up by men. So they decided we will time all our meetings in the coming 3 or 4 months. And what happened? Well, everybody knew that, I have to report this. I don't want to, be looking bad. So they started to moderate the meetings in a different way. They started to look people in the eyes. They started to repeat each other's names. If one guy said a great idea, no one listened, and then another guy said the same thing, they were like, oh, well, Anders, that's actually the same idea that was, put forward 10 minutes earlier. That's so great. But they also invented one extremely important strategy, and it was that 10 minutes before the meeting was over, they looked on the room and they found out, okay, who has been talking least today? Okay, that person. Okay, Anna, you have been not talking that much today. What do you have to bring to the table? And that actually increased the employee satisfaction. It actually, increased the number of ideas that came out of these meetings, etc., etc. So timing the meetings might be a good starting point to see who gets more airtime. but also when you write your strategies or when you business develop. Is a large clothing company that I've been working with, they always put a joker in their business development teams or in a project startup meetings. So they pick a person from the organization that doesn't know anything about the customer, the product, that hasn't been used to do this type of challenges before, and it has a huge impact. So it's really great. But we also work with these heavy engineering companies, and they have a lot of production units. So I mean, if you have the shoes there, and the smallest size is 40, do you understand size 40? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe a woman couldn't use it, for example, or Asian people. Do you have dressing rooms? In the military, when I was there, they had this, I don't know what it's called, it's like that part of the gun. They had to shorten it because I was like very short. But they weren't used to do that. So it's about finding ways to rethink. But one important thing, and that will be my last thing, is that pictures, what you see is what you get. So when we normally look at pictures in the corporations, this is from a magazine, but what do you see on this picture?
Boys.
Boys? Yes? And girls. And the girls wear pink. Yes. Do they have any sticks? No. And the leader is putting all focus on these guys, right? Yeah. So this is, random picture from the media. But if you look on internal magazines, we tend to see this. So we tend to photograph men from below and up. So they look like this visionary, strategic. And, she's climbing up the stairs. So it's so common to see. And we had this in the Swedish newspaper, it was actually 2 months ago. So you see the thing. But this is very interesting from a Swedish perspective because the articles talk about from an immigrant to a highest level politician. And there she stands in front of this, what do you call it? It's like ancient, very Swedish Viking thing. Yeah. So it's like she's truly Swedish. But also what we tend to relate this to nowadays is also racism, or so it's a very awkward picture.
The Viking heritage.
Viking heritage. So she's really Swedish anyhow. But also we have all this, global intranet where you have these press offices. And if you Google manager, probably he comes up. And if you Google production unit, probably they come up. This is my favorite. This is from a magazine. So she's the ones being the new boss. And he's the one, leaving. And the article is about her. Yeah, so it's amazing. And this was a Swedish, it's a secure insurance company. And they try to sell, anyone can have their own, bank. And she says, oh, I could never believe that I could own an own bank. I'm so stupid. And then he's like, of course I own my own bank, don't you? And it's like, when we see all these pictures all the time, it's what you see is what you get. And this, just for fun, this is the Mother's magazine. They created the Father's magazine, but where are the kids? And hang on, this is the last picture, and this is actually a car company, Skoda. Yes, Skoda. They have the majority of females buying their cars, and they were having this advertised 2 or 3 years ago. So it's available with 2-zone air conditioning, so it's like heat and cold. Yes.
It's not in Sweden, I hope.
Not in Sweden, in Slovenia. Yeah, but still, yeah. So that's basically what we do. So we take the corporations from their comfort zone where they tend to have more homogeneity, and we take them to diversity where the magic happens. And yeah, that's what we do, and that's what I hope that I inspired you to do as well, maybe. So thank you. Any questions?
I will start. You said last time that you had been doing this benchmarking or assessment of a big Swedish law firm. Is
Yeah.
that study finished? Can you say something about it?
Yeah,
or
so we
is-
are working with the 10 largest law firms in Sweden right now, and they have identified 10 people each from each firm. And they're going to present their ideas in middle of March. So yeah, next week. Yeah, next week. But it's interesting to see what they find. One firm's, like, when they invented benefits, they saw like, oh, you know, all guys have iPhone 6 and the girls have iPhone 5. That's strange. And I was like, yeah, maybe. So they're starting to see small details, but they're also starting actually to question what does it actually take to become a partner, because they don't have any specified criteria for that. And why do we recruit by grades? Why do you have to have top grades because what you need is actually to be an entrepreneur if you want to be in a law firm. So it's, yeah, they're changing. But the most challenging is of course the thing that women has hormones, and when we do get pregnant, the men say this: you're not fit to be a lawyer. So that's the culture still.
Or a business lawyer.
Or a business lawyer, yeah.
Different in the,
but they do want to change, and they are upgrading. So, but they still have some heavy structures to tackle.
Because at the partnership level, it's kind of very male dominated, at least in the.
So yeah, in the law firms, I think 60% of the junior associates are women, and 10% make it to the top. So it's a huge gap. Yeah. Yes.
Do you find that women who own their own business hire more women than men?
Yeah. Well, they hire more women than men hire women. But we see actually the ones that female entrepreneurs that are hiring, they have more diverse teams overall in terms of gender, age, nationality, everything. Yep. Yes.
The initiative to take contact with you is made by women in the organization. How does it go? That is more you that is knocking on the door, or
yeah,
it would be interesting to see how the
yeah.
channel to get in.
Okay,
and
so
out.
2008, I was hunting every CEO and HR director down, and they were like, "Oh God, now she calls again." But now actually, it is more and more CEOs or business developers that contacts me, because they have also a pressure to do change. But then it always comes back to being the HR director managing it still. But I think that's really bad. It should be on a strategic level. But it's always, I mean, we don't work with companies if we don't have a buy-in from the CEO. Just for you, and then, yeah.
I was also wondering whether you work with universities, because I think that as a student, you notice that it starts over there. That also, like, typically female, like you choose a certain path within school because of that. And also, if there was something that was particularly a challenge in Sweden, if you've noticed something that in this question compared to other countries that you've noticed.
That it's challenging around female career path, or?
I would say like the topic in general. A challenge for Sweden particularly, and also if you've worked.
Yeah, the primary challenge for Sweden is that we believe that we are best in class, and we're not. So we are actually below the EU average. The number of women in management position on average in EU is 34%, and we in Sweden have 27%. So I think that's the greatest challenge, that we believe that we're so good and we're not. Yeah. You?
Yeah. Have you ever worked with an organization that is confronted with the opposite problem, that's female dominated?
Yes. Yes.
Which one? And
yeah. Can I put this off? Is it on or off? I don't know. Yeah, but we've been working with H&M and IKEA. And H&M, I think they have 76% women in the organization. So but I mean, it's the same thing. We have our brains, we do stereotype, we do, pick people that remind us of ourselves, we do give feedback and try to the people's behaviors that remind us of ourselves. So you're biased.